Hi everyone, how are you? So today I'm going to be using the skin tone coloring set that I got from Faber Castell Black Edition I did a video on earlier. And this is the swatch of the colors here, and there are 7 new colors that are not found in the 100 set. And I'm going to be coloring a portrait from this wonderful book, Color Me Beautiful by Jason Hamilton. And he even says in his book, that you can make copies of his pages. So I made a copy of one of his pages on regular photocopy paper so that, if things don't work out the way you like, you can just redo it. I love doing portraits. He does portraits from women all over the world in their native costumes. And this one is a woman from South Africa, South African dress here. So I'm going to be coloring her in today with just using the skin tone sets. So I'm not going to be doing her costume. I'm just going to focus on the face. And let's see where we go from there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and empty these pencils out and we'll get started. Now, the one little complaint I have about these pencils, I mean, they are cheaper pencils, but you have 806, which is walnut brown, and then you have 804, which is black, which I can show you on the swatch here. So 804 Onyx black, and then 806 walnut, which is slightly lighter brown. I mean, they're both very dark, but one's black, one's dark brown. But when you look at the pencils, so again, 806 is the brown. So this is the brown here. You see how dark the tip is. And then 804, the black, is a brownish, a lighter color. I don't know if you can see the difference there. I mean, let's see if I turn that light, that you can see it better now. That doesn't help, okay. Yeah, you see how light this is? This is the black. This is 804, the black. And then this one that looks much darker is the brown, which is actually a lighter color. So it's just, little pet peeve I have there with these pencils. But anyways, I'm starting with the 804 Onyx black. I like to start with the darkest color and then move up to lighter tones as I progress. I'll put in all the shading anywhere. But in this case, I'm going with a darker skin tone, so I'm putting more black than usual. I use black on all skin tones to get that shading in. But especially if I'm going for a darker skin tone, I'm going to be using more of the black for a base. That's just the way I do it. I like to start with the darkest color and move up from there. So I'm just doing little circles. I want to try to fill in and try to get as smooth coverage as I can. Now, this is copy paper. It's not cardstock or anything, so I'll probably be limited in the number of layers I can put because I like to put multiple layers. But so I'm doing a very light layer, very light first layer here. But then in the nose, the nostrils, and around the eyes, and wherever it's really dark, I'll press harder, a little harder there. Sort of putting in the gray tones of the picture. It's not a gray tone picture, so I'm making it a gray tone. You don't have a gray with this set. Another little pet peeve I have, besides the ends, the tips of the pencils not really matching. So you do need to make a swatch to follow. But also that there's no white color, like not the white color for highlights and for burnishing afterwards. I mean, you have an ivory color and the lightest tones you have like a tint to it, like a yellowish tint and a pinkish tint to it. I see a little better there. So these are the lightest colors. So there's a black, but there's no like white or highlights that I like to put down sometimes. The highlighted areas with the white pencil. Now, of course, I have other whites in the 100 set I can pull out, but just for this video, for this portrait, I'm sticking just to the skin tone set. I'm not going to use any other pencils on the face here outside of this. Just to see how it turns out when I use just the skin tone set. So there are 7 new colors in the skin tone set that are not in the 100 set, 7. So it is worth it if you really like these pencils to purchase the, now that there's a skin tone set and there's a couple other sets. I think there's a pastel set. I have to look it up again. I don't remember the names. There's a couple other smaller sets that also have more additional pencils than this. So there's definitely over 100 pencils. And there's some people that, you do a search, there's people who are really into these pencils. I like them a lot too. I think these pencils work very well on the Amazon paper. They remind me a lot of the Black Widow pencils. They have, thin black, because of thin black, what do you call it? Casing? That's not the word. The, you know what I mean? The the wood casing here. They look like Black Widow, and they work like Black Widow. They're soft, but yet have a stiffness to them that's stiffer than like Prismacolor, more like a polychromos, but not as pigmented as polychromos. Of course, polychromos is a more expensive pencil. These are much cheaper, but they work great. I think they work great on copy paper and regular Amazon coloring book paper. So I think these are great pencils. Right now, I'm a very light pressure right now. I'm just putting a first layer on very small circles, and I'm keeping it very light right now. So that's why it's not a lack of pigment. If I press down hard, this has a lot of pigment in it. Very good pigment for for budget pencils. I do like the colors in the Black Edition set, or the Super Soft. I got the one called Super Soft, not realizing they were the same thing, which I made a video about. So I recommend saving money and getting the Black Edition set. If you're thinking of purchasing them, not getting the Super Soft. They're basically the same, even though they have a different shape. This Black Widow are triangular and the Super Soft are round, so they different pencil. They're made differently, but I think otherwise they're the same colors, and otherwise they're the same. So I was putting a little shading at the top of the eye, in the corners, and I will eventually put some eyeliner around the bottom of the eyes. I mean, this picture is he put a lot of eyelashes in there, so you don't have to worry about the eyelashes with this portrait, which is nice. Let's see, started off for you, so he has wonderful portraits in this book, and it's a very popular book. I think it's difficult nowadays a little bit to find a good coloring book on Amazon. Seems like there are many AI coloring books coming out, and you don't realize it unless they tell you in the description. And some of them have a lot of bizarre lines in there that don't belong there, and the pictures. And also there seems to be this fad, I guess. Sarah Renee Clark covered this coloring books on Amazon. She bought the top 100 coloring books, and all the color, I forget the name of it. It's some fad going on where people are coloring these very simple, childish looking coloring books, in my opinion. That I'm just not into. I would not do that. I'm not gonna color these simple looking pictures that look like they're for children, really. But it seems like they're really heavily promoted on Amazon. Like they're like the they're top coloring books. So the bottom line is when you want to find a nicer hand drawn original adult, coloring book, it can be a little tricky to find a decent, book that you're looking for that's not AI and that's, not for children. So, but I do think that this book is good for adults and, young adults. Um, it's not too detailed like some adult coloring books. It's just, women. Now, this is a blown up version of the face now. So what he did was he has most of the women figures are pushed back. They're a little smaller so you can see their costume, their native dress or whatever. And at the end of the book, he takes some of those pictures and he blows up the head to make the head much larger like this. So I got this in the back of the book where so for people like me who like to just color the faces in, and just want to practice, using your skin tones, different skin tone styles and whatnot. Um, so you got a choice. You have a choice there. You have some pictures where the face is you see more of the whole body, the whole image of the costume, and then like this where it's more close up. You get more detail. Yeah, you can get more detailed with the face. All right, so I just put a very light layer of the onks. And next I'm going to go back to the walnut, the 806. And this is the dark brown. And I'm going over the walnut, again, very light circles. Going over the onks, and I'm just bringing it out a little bit more. I'm trying to be careful as I can to fill in not leave any gaps in the coloring, filling in every bit of the area with these little circles. I want to avoid any splotchiness at the end that can easily happen, especially with thinner paper like copy paper like this. Um, if there's any unevenness with the layers and the application of the color, it can end up looking when I burnish later with a lighter color. If there's any places I missed, they'll show up right away. It'll just be boom. Because after you burnish it, so I'm leaving a little sort of space here, a highlight for the chin here. And I'm making the right side of the face a little bit more shaded than the left so that the light basically on the left hand side of her face, make it more interesting looking. And of course, that's the thing you can play around with, different lighting effects. That's why it's great that, he, is open to and suggests, making copies, and I should do more often, but I often just go for it and my coloring books and just color right in the book. But I do love coloring portraits, so I'm sure I could, as time goes on, I could go back and do the same portrait again sometime later and try something new pencils or new style of coloring in portrait. I'm trying to be careful not to accidentally get dark. I just accidentally went a little darker with a stroke and keep the strokes even. If there's any kind of different pressure, and you're gonna again see some kind of splotchiness there in the final result. I want to avoid happening if I can. And since there's not much tooth to this paper, I'm limited with how many layers I can put on. So that's another thing to practice, just doing portraits with different number of layers, as well as different colors, and seeing how it goes, what you like better, what works out better for you. I'm just going to focus on her face and neck area here, upper neck, for this video. Now I'm adding a second layer on top of the one I just did. Okay, now I'm taking out the onks. I just put a layer of onks, 804 and 806. Now I'm taking out 804 again because I want it a little darker. So I'm using very light, still using light, but a little bit light to medium now. a little bit more pressure. I want to end up making it very dark under the chin in the final result. Get extra shaded there, but still keeping it relatively light here. It wasn't the neatest shading. A little more pressure, especially under the nose, the areas that you know are going to be more shaded. And I'm pressing down a little harder now, getting in the shaded areas, making them more prominent here. Over the eyes a bit. Still using the Onyx color 804. Okay, for the eyes, I think the eye color, I'll go with, what's this? 783 hazelnut. I'm going to make her eyes a hazelnut color here, leaving the white spots. Hazelnut, and then maybe a little bit at the top of the, oh, that's not one. 806 walnut. I'm going to make the top parts of the eyes a little darker, the iris is there. So in the shaded area of the eye, you can see a different color around the reflection. Okay. Now I'm taking out 787 terracotta and starting in the darker areas, shaded areas, and bringing it in. Just pressing a medium light, not burnishing yet. I'm speeding things up for the video, so making larger circles now. I mean, if you want to, I would continue making small circles to get as smooth as possible look. I think with the initial layers that I put down, I think I should be good. Crossing my fingers that when I burnish it, it will look nice and smooth, the skin. We'll find out. I think it should be all right. As long as your initial layers are relatively smooth, you don't leave any gaps or miss any spaces, should be okay, I think, the final result. Oh, you can really see it's looking a little light. Let me bring that. Okay, I think that looks a little bit more accurate. I do have some layers on here. You can't even see it. It's looking like I had nothing on there in the paper. Again, I'm still putting light layers. I'm not burnishing yet. I'm coloring in a different direction than what the initial layers to sort of fill in more spaces. And I am speeding things up again, so hopefully this will still be okay and smooth. All right, so that's what I have so far. Now again, I'm going to press harder now. So now I'm going to add a little bit more pressure here with the 787. So we're burnishing it now around the neck. I'm going to start with the neck area, see how. Because the neck area, the whole neck area, I'm making more shaded anyways. No highlights here like on the face. So now I'm really pressing down hard. So you can see I'm putting a lot more color down now. I just want to. Okay. Hoping the shading that I put in is enough to see through the burnishing here, because now I'm putting a very thick layer of pencil down. And once I do this, that's it. Yeah, so we would put a few more layers on, but not much. I might be able to. When I go in the other direction now, I'm going like a very light layer here, so I'm gonna smooth it together here. Yeah, and I'll go over it again with colorless blender. I think the Prismacolor colorless blender works really well with these pencils. Yeah, it's still a little. I can use a white Prismacolor or I think I'll use the colorless blender. So the Prismacolor, a colorless blender, and I'm gonna just fill and smooth it out. Yeah, it smooths it out very nicely. Okay, so now, yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'm smoothing all that out now. It's not too splotchy. There we go. Okay. It's pretty smooth. I mean, it's as smooth as I'm going to get it anyways. There, I don't know if that helps any, not really. I don't know. I'll leave it there. So I'm going back to 787 and I'm going to start pressing hard here. More pressure. So you start filling in that tooth of the paper. Again, it's not going to look very smooth at first until I blend it together. So like Prismacolors, these do the Prismacolor blender works well with these pencils. So I do like that. I did try the Caran d'Ache earlier with these pencils, and I did not find that it worked well enough with these pencils because Prismacolor colorless blender is it pushes the color around more. It's harder than the Caran d'Ache blenders. They're made for the Caran d'Ache pencils, and they don't push the pencil around so much as like seal it down. And in this case, with these pencils, the way I'm coloring, I want the Prismacolor colorless blender to smooth it out and move the pigment around to smooth the skin tone. So I prefer the Prismacolor. I think I don't have Koh-i-Noor or the what's the other one? Another popular Color blender. The Color blender is also supposed to be very like Prisma, like a little harder. But sometimes the harder blenders will help you really smooth things out easier. I might try those in the future. I don't know, but I think I really like the Prismacolor colorless blender. That's what I've been using. So I'm gonna stick with that, I think. For now, anyways. Yeah, I think it's the Color blender, I think is really popular as well. I've just got the Prismacolor blender and the Caran d'Ache one. Those are the two big ones that I have tried. Now the lips, I'm going with the lips and pressing down hard. Colored in, and then a little highlight there in the middle of the bottom lip. And then the upper lip, I added a little shading on there to make it a little three-dimension. Okay. I tried also in the past with these pencils to use the alcohol marker blender, and I did not find that that worked. I haven't tried any other solvents. I haven't tried Gamsol or anything. But the alcohol blender, I don't think works very well, in my opinion, with these pencils. But the only thing that seems to work for me with these pencils is the Prismacolor. What I found so far is the Prismacolor blender. It's the only thing that works for me, that works well with these pencils that I like. So that is what I use with these. I think that's all I'm going to use going forward is with these pencils. I'm blending pretty heavily here. I am looking down hard here with this terracotta pencil 787, covering the face. And I am doing it rather quickly. Not the neatest strokes here, but I know I'm going to blend it in a minute, so I make sure to just get it all covered, before I start blending. 'Cause once I blend it with the Prismacolor, that's it. You're done, right? You're probably very difficult to get any more colors on. So I am, adding much color as I think I'm gonna need. Hopefully, I don't go too. Sometimes I get carried away and get pressed too hard, too fast. All right, there we go. So that's the messy looking part. Now I'm getting the Prismacolor color splendor. I'm going the opposite direction, pressing hard here, smoothing that out. Look at that. Yes. So it is like they are like Prismacolor like that. You can smooth them out. I don't know if I'm going to get it entirely smoothed out. Again, I'm using copy paper here, but copy paper is very smooth. So I should, as long as I'm relatively careful with the layers, I should be able to should be relatively easy to get a smooth. And again, I'm pressing hard with the blender here. So there we go. Now it's nice. Well, it's smoother. Let's see. It's not perfect. I'm not going to get it perfectly smooth. I'd have to spend a lot longer to get perfectly smooth. I spend a lot more time on making smaller circles and really getting into every nook and cranny. And I just want to test out these pencils. I'm not trying to make a perfect portrait here. Just want to test them out and see how they are. I think I think these pencils work really well with Amazon paper, copy paper. I really do like them. These papers. Give you a nice thick coverage. Fun to work with. Kind of diagonal kind of positioning to it. So I think that's, let me see. This is probably as smooth as I'm going to be able to get it now. All right, so I'm going back to, now that I've burnished it, I have to go back over the shadow areas again. So I'm going to use 806, the walnut, and I'm going out, because when you blend it together like that, you sort of lose the shadows a bit. I'm going back in and, oops, I just broke the tip there a little bit, but I'm going back in and putting in the shadows that I had, making it a little darker. I kind of covered them all up with the terracotta there. I'm going to put in that eyeliner again. Look, put a little makeup on here. And I'm going to get the onks out again, 804. And put in that shadow again, just to make sure it's nice and shadowed in the area in the eye. I'm going to get the 787, the terracotta for the insides of the eyes. It's a little reddish there. And in the corners of the eyes, it looks a little bit reddish. And then get the onks again and put that shading in there, sort of fading it out. There we go. And of course, around the lips, under the lips there, the corners. And some eye over the eyeshadow again, using the onks again. I'm going over this eyelashes and adding a little shadow, a little makeup there. And the hair a bit. And going back to 806 with the eyebrows. I already colored in the eyebrows a bit with the onks. I'm going over it again with the walnuts. Okay, so I finished this and I burnished it. And this is on, again, on just regular copy paper. But I want to see if I can, even after burnishing it, and I'll push my luck here, see if I can do a little bit more coloring here. If I can shade it a little bit more. So I just want a little bit more shaded. That doesn't look three-dimensional enough to me. It looks too light. So I'm going to take I'm thinking of taking caramel, 805. Okay, so 805 caramel. And I'm gonna see about if I can go over this. Now, the great thing about these pencils is even after you've burnished it, you can still go over. They're like very forgiving pencils in that way. But I just have to be careful how I apply it so it doesn't get too clumpy. But I think I can add another layer on here, even on after burnishing and pressing really hard with the blender. Add a little bit more color here. I'd be very careful how I do it, though, of course, because the tooth is all flattened, and so, it'll start getting very patchy. So, I'm using very small circles and try not to press too hard, but just enough to get, yeah, it's just adding a little bit more subtle shading onto her face. I like that. The caramel, I think the caramel really helps give a nice subtle effect, mid-tone effect. It just adds a little more realism to it. Yeah, I'm going to take a little more of the 787 terracotta again. I just want to add a little more. Warmth here, the cheek areas. It's getting a little too scratchy looking. Using my Prismacolor blender pencil again to see if I can smooth out that little bit of the blotchiness there. I don't know if it'll work. Maybe a little bit. Okay. Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad. I mean, this line here is not going anywhere. It does sort of lift off sometimes. So that's, like I said, it's a good blender pencil for really moving that color around when you really want it to move. And it does lift up a lot of the um, shading that you put in, So when I use Espresso 784, so I'm just going to go in. Whoops, this went a little too far there, but whatever. Just reshade this in here a little bit. Um, let me see about adding a little more 787 terracotta here. Add a little bit more down here. And under the eyes, a little under eye. And on the nose. Well, then I don't even know if it's registering at this point because the paper is so full of color. Maybe just a little bit. It's showing up, right? So maybe a little bit, just a touch more light shade here. Just adding a little bit more color. Yeah, it's not really doing much. Well, very little, but yeah, it's because I already, like I said, blended it. So but you can still add just like a little bit more color, just a touch. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, so there we go. There we have it. So I'm going to stop there. So I hope you found this interesting. One more thing. I lost some color here too. Let me put some terracotta. Really heavy hand on there. There we go. Yeah, I'm giving her some makeup there. Okay, now I'm happy. Okay, so I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.